Need custom beer labels fast? At InTouch Labels and Packaging, we deliver industry-leading 3-day turnaround on every order, regardless of quantity. We carry a wide assortment of die-cut templates in standard and custom shapes and sizes. With a combination of top-of-the-line machines and experienced operators, InTouch can pump out an astonishing quantity of custom labels quickly. Our competitive pricing means you get top-quality labels without breaking the bank. Need help? Our top-tier customer service is here to assist you every step of the way. So why wait? Get your custom labels with lightning-fast 3-day turnaround and unbeatable service at InTouch Labels and Packaging, where your brand gets the attention it deserves.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Using Your Taproom as a Profit Center. My name is Andrew Coplon. I am founder of Craft Beer Professionals and Secret Hopper. Craft Beer Professionals started as a Facebook community where I was the only person, and we've grown it to nearly 18,000 people at this point in time. Our goal is to provide educational resources both online and in person for people working in the craft beer industry. Everything we do is online. Online is 100% free and accessible to all. We love building relationships. We love connecting people. We love providing you with the skills to see greater success. And I also run Secret Hopper, which is a mystery shopping company that helps breweries and tap rooms nationwide create more memorable and profitable taproom experiences. We're going to throw out a lot of data and insights from that hat that I wear. But my buddy here with me today is Kary Shumway, and together we are part of Taproom Success, which both brings together our sides. We focus on hospitality a lot from my insight, but also Kary's financial know-hows. And today we're going to share how to use your brewery, your tap room, as a profit center. And Kary, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thanks, Andrew. Yep, I'm Kary Shumway, founder of Craft Brewery Finance and Beer Business Finance. Really focus on financial training and education for those in the beer business. So I'm a CPA, former CFO for a brewery and a beer wholesaler, been in the beer business for 25 years, and really just kind of sharing what I've learned, trying to shorten the learning curve for you so you can create a financially successful brewery. And as Andrew said, we've combined forces and created Taproom Success so we can really, focus specifically on that aspect of a brewery, because as the title of today's presentation, we want to use that taproom as a profit center. And that's really what it is. So hopefully we can share some tips, tactics, and strategies that you can use to create a more profitable taproom for you and your guests.
And Kary, tell them a little bit more about what Taproom Success is.
Yeah, so Taproom Success, we really do three major things. One is we have our monthly mastermind meetings where we bring together all of our members, jump on a Zoom, we share ideas and best practices, we help each other out with challenges. So the group, it's a very open forum. What are you working on today? And then as a group, we talk about solutions. Secondly, we bring in a monthly expert. So we'll focus on various aspects of running a taproom business. That can be like, how do you bring more customers in? What are the marketing aspects? What are the levers that you need to pull? We might talk about your food program, like what's working, what's not, how to make that more profitable. We'll talk about best software programs that are out there to help manage events, or your point of sale system, or your brewery management. And then we have our online courses, which are for you and anyone in your tap room, that really take you through all of the core functions that you need to run a successful taproom. So that can be the financial side, that's the customer service side, staff and manager training. So it's on demand, online, 24/7, whenever you need it.
And one thing I love about Taproom Success, the masterminds are fantastic to hear and learn from other taproom managers and owners across the country. But for our industry expert sessions, it's not like today where you're watching us with slides and through a screen. These industry expert sessions are intimate conversations where you can ask the questions that you're most curious about. And I always look forward to all of our virtual meetups through Taproom Success. Now, today we've got some goals for you. First, what we're going to do, we want to help you understand key financial metrics that drive taproom profitability and long-term success. So important. We're also going to discover the data behind easy to implement taproom habits. We want you to walk away from today with actionable strategies that you and your team can use.
We also talk about the key actions that you're going to need to take. So we'll share a lot of data and key metrics and all of these things, but it doesn't really mean anything unless you put it into place. So we really want to give you some clear steps to follow so you can create those profitable taproom experiences, and then empower your team with these leadership tactics, strategies that can help drive those results.
So the taproom experience has changed a lot over the past decade. A decade ago, you could have a warehouse location, you could have an okay product, and you could be fairly successful. But how things have changed. What you're looking at right now is what I refer to as the Venn diagram of taproom experience. Think back to elementary school when you would make these little Venn diagrams. So as I mentioned, quality beer today is a must. Beer is the anchor of our industry, and unless you're making a quality product, you are not going to survive. But there's also two other components that are extremely important. First off, we've got engaging staff. This is when your team build relationships with those who enter your taproom. It's so important for your staff to be educated on your brewery story, your offerings, be able to tell that to those on the other side of the bar. But also, it's so important to have a memorable atmosphere. Like I said, gone are the days of the dingy warehouses that were dark and didn't have a lot of a vibe. A vibe is so important. People are being so intentional with where they visit, and they're looking for that memorable atmosphere. And that memorable atmosphere could include anything from the music that you're playing, to the temperature of the tap room, to the events that you host, to what you offer. And when you get to the intersection of these three, quality beer, memorable atmosphere, engaging staff, you have what I refer to as a wow experience. And that makes the guests crave return visits to your tap room. About a decade ago, when I first got into this, we weren't really talking about hospitality. I'm honestly guilty of it myself. When I was first launching Secret Hopper, we were talking about the importance of these memorable experiences, but I wasn't using that word. So what we're going to do now, we're going to look at how the importance and the impact of hospitality has changed from 2017 until present. And what we're going to do to get here is look at low versus high engagement visits. What I mean by that is a low engagement visit is when you go to a tap room, the bartender or server is barely going through the motions. They're not educating you about the brewery. They might not even thank you on their way out. They kind of feel like they don't want to be there. On the other side of things, a high engagement visit is when Kary's educating me on the story behind the brand. He's walking me through my flight. He's checking back in a timely manner, and he's making sure he gives me a reason to leave. And when I walk out the door after visiting Kary, I'm not saying, wow, that was a great IPA. I'm saying, wow, I can't wait to come back and visit Kary. So looking at a data set of nearly 10,000 visits over the past 8 years now, when you look at 2017 to 2020, comparing low versus high engagement visits, high engagement visits had tabs that were only 14% higher. So the guests receiving that high level of engagement were only spending 14% more than those who were receiving a low level of engagement. Now look at the years 2021 to 2022, comparing high versus low engagement visits. It's starting to get a little bit better. So those receiving high engagement were spending nearly 30% more than those who received a low level of engagement. People are appreciating this. This is following the pandemic. I think people are being much more intentional there. They're craving a little more human interaction, and they're wanting this high level of hospitality. But now check this. As we look at 2022 to 2024, guests who receive a high level of engagement are spending a whopping 40% more in your tap rooms. People are craving this level of hospitality, and it's so important. Also, here's some interesting data for you. So first-time guests, when they come to your tap room, if they receive a low level of engagement, they're only 45% likely to return and recommend your business. So unless someone's dragging me back, they are not coming. However, guests are 99% likely to return and recommend when receiving a high level of engagement. Now look at this. Take a moment to stare. Which one would you rather receive in your tap room? Would you rather have the guests come in and spend nearly $59 per visit, or just about $42? This is what we're talking about when we talk about the importance of high versus low engagement. Your team has the power to make these visits more profitable, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
So we're going to share a lot of data, a lot of tactics, but just for now, I want to step back and put it all in context and talk about, what's the goal, right, of all these strategies and tactics. And ultimately, it's to run a financially successful business, financially successful tap room. So what we want to share with you today is the 5-step brewing financial excellence process. And really what this means is when you're brewing beer, you have a process that get a consistent and predictable result. So you wouldn't think of brewing beer without your checklists and your recipes, and everything has to be done in a very specific order to a very specific process. So I want you to think about that in the context of your financial statements. In order to get consistent, reliable, predictable results, we need to follow a process. Now, our goal with our financials is to create complete, timely, and accurate numbers. So in order to do that, I want to share this process with you. And it's really these 5 steps, and I'll go through each of them. But the first is you really want to orient on the state of your financials right now. So review your financials. What does that mean? You have the big 3 of your financials. You get your income statement, your balance sheet, your statement of cash flows. Now, you may be running one or more of these on a regular basis. You may need to reacquaint with them, but we generally recommend start with your income statement. That's going to show your sales, margins, expenses, and profitability, and then kind of work through from there. So we really want to kind of set the context of where are we? Where have we been? Are we doing as well as we need to do? How are we quantifying that? How are we defining that? And where do we need to go? And then next is we want to set some goals. What are the requirements that we have as owners? What are the requirements that our stakeholders have? Maybe we have outside investors, we have banks. People have these requirements. What are they? Let's define them and set those goals, quantify them. The third is we want to look at documenting our standard operating procedures, really looking at the fundamentals of our business, making sure those are sound. The fourth step is to build that budget, your financial roadmap. So this is really going to be your game plan for getting from where you are to where you want to be. And then lastly is using financial check-ins. And this is really important to make sure that we're consistently, you think again about brewing your beer, you're constantly checking, the important measurements along the way to make sure you're getting the quality, you're making sure you're getting that consistency. We need to do that same thing with your financials and have these regular check-ins. What are our targets? Where are we relative to those targets? What are the gaps? And then once you've identified them, we work on closing them. But it's that consistency that's super important. So next slide, we have just going to kind of dig in a little bit on each of these steps. So review the state of the financials. So how have the numbers changed? What causes can we identify? If you're not performing as well as you'd like from a financial standpoint, was there a time when the numbers look good? And I work with many breweries where maybe 5, 6, 8, 10 years old, and maybe the numbers have kind of eroded over that time. We were doing good, and then some things have changed. So I want you to look back historically and say, is there a picture of when the business was in good financial shape? What does that look like? And now how does that compare to where we are now? So we really want to kind of see how the numbers have changed, what's caused those. Very often we'll see a fairly steady increase in sales, then it sort of flattens out and starts to decline, whereby your expenses maybe just never did go down. They keep kind of going up and up and up. And then the correlation between sales and margins and expenses gets out of whack, and our numbers start looking less than ideal. So the first step is really just review the state of the financials. So the next slide, I want to show you just kind of a quick visualization of what that can look like. So this is very summarized income statement, sales through net income, showing us year 1, 2, and 3. Say you've been in business for 3 years. And I would encourage you to try this in your business if you've been open multiple years and/or your numbers aren't quite where you want them to be. Just look historically at the trends. So here I'm showing you, sales year 1 are 525, and then we're increasing. Our margins look to be eroding a little bit. We went from 75% margin down to 49. So maybe we started wholesale distribution. Our expenses as a percentage of sales are holding around 60%, but you can see it increased pretty significantly. And of course, the almighty bottom line is really focused where we were profitable and now we're showing a loss. So you can kind of summarize it so that it'll be more digestible, and then you can kind of highlight the areas that have changed to kind of work through that. So step 2, define the goals. So once you've sort of set the context, like where are you, what are things looking like, we want to start setting a goal for where we want to get to. So for our goals with sales, cash flow, we want to identify who are our stakeholders and what are their requirements. So if you have owners, investors, lenders, they're each going to have a slightly different requirement, whether that's your bank covenants, whether that's a requirement for return to your investors. We often, when we're starting our brewery business, we'll do a business plan and we'll get it to the banks and we'll get our funding and then off we go and rarely look at the business planning. So I'd really encourage you to revisit what your strategy is on a regular basis. And one tool that I've found super useful is the one-page business plan. So rather than rewriting or re-editing a business plan that might have been 20 or 30 or 50 pages long with all sorts of information that's like, I just put it in here. Just keep it to one page. And really what you're focused on are what are the actionable items that are going to help you achieve your goals. So set those goals. Who are your stakeholders? What are their requirements? How do you quantify it? And then build that into a one-page business plan with objectives and action items. This is a great tool to help you. The third step in brewing financial excellence is to look at your foundation, your details, your standard operating procedures. We think about the chart of accounts, who is your professional team, what are you using for software, and so forth. So as far as your standard operating procedures, again, really just kind of having checklists of, how do you close your books each month? What are your month-end procedures? What does that look like? The chart of accounts is really sort of the fundamental. When I'm working with breweries and they're not quite getting what they need, maybe the financials, the reporting isn't quite what they want, it's almost always a function of the chart of accounts aren't set up properly. So that's one of the first things we look at is, are these accounts set up in such a fashion so that you can get the reporting that you want. So in the next slide, I want to show you a quick example of how we might analyze our chart of accounts. So what we're looking to do is create really functional areas. So sales, cost of goods, and margins. We want to be able to see what those look like, particularly if we're talking about if you're self-distributing or you're using wholesale in addition to your taproom. We want to kind of chunk these things down so that you can very quickly and specifically understand the economics or the profitability of each of those areas of your business. So what more often than not, what happens is when I go in and I analyze financials, we're making money in the taproom, we're losing money at wholesale, but we don't really know that unless the chart of accounts is set up so that we can capture those separately. So if you're using QuickBooks, we recommend using classes so that you can see what that looks like.
Kary, I do want to step in for a minute and compliment you on that high quality clip art. Did it come from like 1990 or something?
Do you like that? We like to keep things simple. These numbers, guys, we don't want to mess around with any real pictures. We like the vectors. That's a vector, Andrew.
It's very beautiful.
Thank you. So step 4, I don't have any beautiful clip art here, unfortunately, but this is our step where we talk about the budget. Nobody likes that word. I've tried over the years to rebrand it into a profit plan. Sometimes you use the word pro forma because it sounds fancy, but it's a budget. It's what it is. It's a financial roadmap. So as with most journeys, right, Andrew, if you're taking a journey, you begin with the end in mind. Where are we going, right? So we're here. We want to get there. How are we going to get there? Some journeys are, I don't know, let's just start driving. And I think that's what many business owners do, is like, we'll work it out. We're selling beer, we're having fun, it's going to work out. And then at some point in the journey, you realize, I'm not sure we're actually getting where we want to go. So we got to define what success looks like, begin with the end in mind, and set those goals. So I'm going to give you kind of 6 financial building blocks that you can use to really simplify the budgeting process. You can plug in your numbers and use models and templates to help in that process. So these are the 6 steps. You got to build a sales plan and a margin plan, build out your operating expenses, your capital expenses. Those are like fixed assets. You're buying tanks and kegs and whatnot. What does your debt service look like? This is really where folks get tripped up, is that debt needs to be repaid. And just because we get the money doesn't mean, we have the ability to repay it. So we really need to understand what that looks like. And then our cash flow drivers. So each of these has, kind of a set of steps that we want to follow. But the beauty of this is you don't need to do them in order. So if you're sitting here and you're like, I don't know where to start, you start with what's most approachable. And sometimes that might be with your capital expense schedule, meaning you want to buy more kegs for your business. You need to buy additional tanks. What are you looking to purchase? How much is it going to cost? When do you think you're going to buy it? How are you going to pay for these? Just make the list. So it's usually like, all right, well, we need these things. Let's list it out. Okay, boom, step one is done. And then maybe you move over to your debt schedule, because now, like, well, I know I have a loan and the bank gave me this payment schedule and I know what the balance is and the monthly payments. All right, let's sketch that out. And before you know it, it's really building a puzzle. So you don't have to know everything at once. You just kind of work through and you build a little bit of momentum, and then eventually you'll get the whole thing done. And it's an iterative process. You got to do it over and over again to be comfortable with it, to get to that point where you feel like, all right, yep, I see all the pieces of the puzzle. I know what I want to build, and then you just get after it. So the final step 5, once all that's completed, right? Step 1, we orient ourselves. Where were we? Where are we? Where do we want to be? We work on what are the goals, who are the stakeholders, and what requirements do we need to set. We look at our fundamentals, our chart of accounts, our standard operating procedures. We create our budget, our financial plan. Awesome. Now we're in good shape. But now we need to keep, this is a daily, weekly, consistent. It's not one and done. I think that's a flaw with business plans and budgets is, oh, good, the business plan is done. Goes in a drawer, never see it again. Budget, off in a spreadsheet, nobody's looking at it. The only way this works is if we regularly and consistently look at these things. So financial check-ins. And the single best thing that I can share with you today, if you're going to implement any of these steps, is to use what they're called financial huddles. Now, these are repeating weekly or monthly reviews. These are ways that you and your team can sit down and look at the most important numbers of your taproom business and make sure you're on track. So some of the fundamentals is we want to have a model for this. And a lot of people will say, well, what are the 3 to 5 key metrics that I should be watching? So we would define that. Who's responsible for those? I need names and I need numbers. So when you come to these meetings, people actually are prepared, and it's not all on you as the owner. You can share this responsibility. So there has to be that information flow. We want people to prepare in advance. And these are also great opportunities for continuous training and reforecasting, where we're coming into these meetings. We don't have it all figured out. I mean, that's the point, is we're coming in to share what we know, work together to get better. And people are reporting on their numbers, but how those numbers came to be and what actions they're going to take to continue to improve. So the financial huddle is definitely something to think about, to dig in on. It's, again, in my experience, one of the single best ways you can improve financial results in your taproom.
So Kary, before we dive into the next segment of our presentation today, why is the taproom so important from a financial perspective today?
Yeah, it's generally going to be your biggest profit center. I mean, it's simply where you make the money, and it's just math. You look at, if you're selling an average barrel of beer through your taproom, $1,200, $1,500 revenue per barrel. If you're selling an average barrel of beer at wholesale or self-distro, you're looking at probably about a third to a quarter of that amount, $300-$400 a barrel. So the math just works. The beer costs you the same to make, but that margin is pretty dramatically different. Plus that, sales to consumers, you've got options to sell other things, as we've talked about, as you know about, and Andrew's got a lot more data to share relative to go beer and merchandise and events and loyalty programs. There's just so many opportunities. What I see, and this is kind of surprising, because I'm not gonna say most, but many of the breweries that I work with it's the shiny object syndrome. I think, like, oh my gosh, I got to get to wholesale. I want to see my beer out in the market. My friends are really asking for it. And I'm like, okay, but keep that in check, because it's really hard to make money that way. Don't take your eye off the prize. The taproom profitability is the prize.
So what we're going to do now is talk about ways that you can actually make more money in your tap room. And we're going to give you the tools that you can take back to your staff to train them, these little tips and tricks, these little habits that you can train them on that are going to make visits more profitable. Now, I'm going to quote some data for the next few slides. And what I'm going to be quoting from is two different sets. The first set literally is nearly 10,000 unique taproom visits over the past 5 years. And in some other sets, I'm going to cite data specifically from 2022 to 2024. On average, all of these tabs that I'm going to quote, they include 2 guests and also include tip and tax. I'm going to also not only refer to tab size, but I'm going to also refer to party size. What I refer to as tab, the people in just Kary and I's tab. But if I refer to an overall party, that's Kary and I and everyone else that we are with at that engagement. And the average party size we're going to talk about today is 3 guests. So first, greeting and thanking your guest. I mean, we've all heard everybody say you only have one chance to make a first impression, and greeting your guest is so important. No one likes to walk into a tap room and feel like they're not acknowledged. I mean, even when the line's a mile long, you can just say, hey, I'll be right with you in a moment. And on the other end of things, the other bookend is thanking your guest. No one wants to leave a tap room after spending quite a bit of money and not receive a sincere thank you. So why are these two habits so important? Guests spend nearly 30% more when they receive a smile, hello, or other welcoming gesture upon entering. This really sets the tone for a really hospitable, engaging visit. It has to be, it doesn't have to be long. It can just be, hey, welcome to the tap room today. We'll be with you in just a moment. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Just that simple greeting goes a long way. And as I mentioned, it leads to a more engaged visit. When a staff member starts off with that simple hello, that team member is nearly 350% more likely to provide a high level of engagement than for a visit when that simple hello doesn't happen. Another part that's so important, and it might not be important to your guest, but it has impact on you and your team. When I go, hi, I'm Andrew, welcome to the brewery, those instances where a staff member performs that action, those tabs are consistently 25% higher. Kary's never probably going to get upset that I didn't introduce myself in that brief, encounter of service. However, they unconsciously feel a deep connection to that team member, and it really just opens the doors for more sharing. Now, on the other end of things, this blows my mind and it actually upsets me a little bit. 1 out of 5 guests leave a tap room without being both welcomed and thanked. If you're going to take anything away from today, literally welcome your guest and thank your guest. Those two things are so important. Now I'm going to go into something that Kary and I both love. And a few years ago, when I first brought out data on this, no, it's not kids and breweries. No, we're not going to talk about seltzer. But this was oddly controversial. So what we're going to do, I want you to think about your menus. So right now, you're watching me through a screen. What are the things that you like to have on your menus? Shout it out. We're listening. Okay. Yeah, those are some pretty good ideas, right, Kary? I've heard name of the beer. We've got ABV. We've got size options, whether you've got it in flights, pint size, maybe even half pours to go. All that information on the menu. And as you can see, the one we're looking at today, it has some quick tasting notes. I think that's so important. It's really important to think about what your menu can convey and teach your guests. When Kary and I go to a brewery together, say we're given a physical menu, and we both love physical menus. Don't you, Kary?
I do, and I can't stand it when they take it away, and that happens a lot. And I've griped about this before. You sit down, you order your beer, they take the menu away. Do not take the menu from me. I'm not having just one beer. I need to come back for more.
No, I love it, because if I'm by myself at a brewery, I'm just going to study that menu my entire visit. I'm going to learn about the beers. I might even learn about the history of the brewery. I'm going to think about what I'm going to have next. And if I like something so much, I'm going to learn that, I can take it to go. So a menu is an important tool for education. It's also going to spark conversation. Kary and I are going to discuss our next moves. And it's going to be, once again, something that can deepen our connection with your brewery. So I love physical menus, and as I said, Kary does too. And when physical menus are included as part of when someone offers you a physical menu, I should say, those visits when it is given, and when I'm talking physical, it's something you can actually hold in your hands. Let's put our thoughts aside on cost of paper and things like that right now. But when you have that physical menu, and I'm not talking QR code, I'm talking like paper and something laminated, guests are going to spend a little over $61 versus $46 when they don't have that physical menu. Those are tabs 33% higher. But as we all know, when you go to a tap room these days, you don't just have one menu type. Years ago, you'd have the wall menu, maybe a TV menu. You would have that physical menu that you could hold in your hands. We probably didn't have QR code menus back then, but now it's literally a menu of menus. And when you look at having a physical menu, just the physical menu in your hands versus just a wall menu, those guests who have that paper or physical menu are going to spend 43% more than those people who just have a wall menu to look at. Wall menus can be hard. People might not be able to read it. It might be hard to see from the seat. Having that physical menu is a huge add-on. So if you only have a wall menu, does anybody have a wall menu as your only menu option? You don't need to raise your hands. But if you do, add at least a physical menu to the mix, because wall menus alone equal the lowest spend. And Kary, I didn't plan to go on a tear against wall menus today because they're absolutely really important, but you need to have more than the wall menu.
I don't like those wall. I can't even read them. I'm in there squinting away, getting old, Andrew, and I'm not the only one. So yeah, you got to have.
I only wear my glasses when I'm watching Netflix. I don't want to have to carry my glasses to the brewery. That's a pain. So, think about the menu types that you have, because the goal is to reach as many people as possible with these menu types. And that's going to result in having more menus in your tap room. And right now, many of us do have QR codes. And when QR code menus are as part of the whole menu options that you're offering your guests, when you have those QR codes, they're leading to the highest average spend when you have multiple menu options. On experiences that include a QR code, we're going to see tabs average a little over 57 items. So if you're only going to pick one menu type, which you shouldn't do, it should be physical. But if you want to have that menu of menus for your guest, make sure QR codes are part of the mix. Kary, any other thoughts on menus?
Optionality. That's it. You said it. You got to meet people where they are. And what we've often talked about is you got to make it easy for them to buy from you. Frictionless buying, frictionless selling. The last thing I would say, going back to the explanation, we tend to get really clever with our beer names, which is great, but we also want to be clear. As a consumer and, representative of, beer drinkers out there, I want to know very basic and specific things about what I'm ordering. What is the style? What is the ABV? Tasting notes are great. The name of it's fine. Oh, that's interesting. I'll have a whatever. But I think most people are really looking for clarity on what it is they're ordering. I like a certain style, and I want to know how much the ABV is if I'm planning ahead to have more than one.
Yeah, type matters, information matters. You have to give your guests the tools to order the same beer again. Now, let's talk about flights. Raise your hand if you love flights. I can see through the screen that many of you are not raising your hands. And from the service perspective, I get it. They can be a pain to serve sometimes. I imagine your team would rather just pass a pint across the bar rather than pour 5 samples or 6 samples or 7 samples or whatever it may be. But the goal from a flight is to educate. It's a huge tool to educate. And when you pass someone a flight, don't just sling it across the bar, but say, hey, this flight goes from left to right, our lightest to darkest option. Here's what you're going to drink first. Give them a little sheet of paper of some ways to know what they're drinking. That way you give them the tools to order it again. So when staff encourage guests to start with a flight, they're going to spend 15% more. And just like a menu, flights are going to generate conversation and education. If Kary and I are walking through this flight together, we might even share some of them. We're going to talk about what we like best. We're going to say, I think I'm going to order a pint of this one next. But also from your side of things, it is an awesome tool to teach people more about the beers that you have on tap. Now, this is a stat that I love. We'll dive into it more a little bit later, but guests are a ridiculous 457%. That's a big number. More likely to purchase to-go beer when staff suggests a flight and to-go beer versus when neither action takes place. And when the flight is suggested and to-go beer is suggested, tabs are 44% higher. higher. And I'd like to also shout out to Katie at the Glass Jug for this one in North Carolina. She taught me the question, what are you in the mood for? Sometimes, you know, I might like a barrel-aged stout, but I might not want that on a hot summer day. Sometimes when you ask that question, it helps the guests figure out what the right beverage for them is. And if it's their first time visit, maybe you have a rotating menu, maybe you have a large menu. What are you in the mood for? The answer to that question, it might just be a flight, is the best response. Now, this is a very fun one. What I refer to this as is when you go to a business, doesn't even have to be a brewery, any other hospitality business, and when they ask you if you like another beverage. You know, if I'm finishing my pint, I'm waiting for the server, and they don't come around, I might turn to Kary and say, well, okay, you want to go to the brewery around the corner? You're going to get a little frustrated. And we actually see that staff are not encouraging another beverage nearly 50% of the time. And honestly, that blows my mind. But magically, when staff encourage guests to order another drink, the average tab size increases by a little over $6. Magic, right? Guests who were asked and got another drink spend 79% more than those who weren't asked and don't. Just ask that question. Would you like another drink? Hey, Kary, you really enjoyed that lager. Would you like to have another pint? And nearly 40% of taproom visits involve guests who are not encouraged to order another drink. So that really is mind-blowing. So for the first 3 habits we've talked about that you can take back to your staff, they're not hard. Would you, thanking and greeting your guest? Would you like to start with a flight? Can I interest you in another beverage? Getting your team to do these things can result in more profitable visits for you and your team. And in turn, when they get tabs a little bit higher, they're going to make more tips and be a little bit happier and probably want to stick around at your place of employment a little bit more. Now, we couldn't have a talk without this one. Selling more to-go beer. Does anybody want to guess how often this happens? Well, the answer is not enough. We actually see that to-go beer is encouraged on a little less than 20% of taproom visits. And guests buy to-go beer only 9% of the time unprompted. But magically, when Kary says, hey, Andrew, did you know we have your favorite Belgian IPA to go? The guest is going to purchase it 49% of the time when it is suggested. So guests who buy to-go beer, they're not only spending more, but those team members are getting higher tips. And yes, I know there's kind of a debate whether guests tip on to-go beer, but when a guest is spending time in your tap room, they actually are going to tip higher on to-go beer. And it really comes down to engagement, because the team member who's ending the visit asking me if I want to-go beer, they're probably doing every other step along the way to create that engaged visit. So they're already working up to that high level of engagement, which is going to result in them getting higher tips. So it's only icing on the cake when you ask me if I want to-go beer, and I'm already going to tip you really well. So train your team to naturally incorporate to-go beer suggestions into these interactions. Now, what we're going to talk about now, those 5 things are things we have data on that are going to and guaranteed to make you more money. But now we're going to talk about 5 things you could be doing, but probably aren't. So don't get mad at Kary and I if some of these things are already things you're doing in your tap room. Good for you. If so, you're ahead of the curve. But even if you're not, these are also little tips and tricks that could create more profitable visits. So have a simple food menu. No longer are we just trying to appeal to beer nerds. We're innovating. We're having unique drink options on our menu. We're having non-alcoholic. We're having, wine. We're having cocktails. We're having a lot of other things. But also, we're trying to please everyone in that party. Some people might not drink, including my 5-year-old I'm bringing along with me. So have a simple food menu. And not everybody has the ability to have a full kitchen. We understand that. Kary and I are happy to connect with you following on ways to kind of start thinking about what food options you should have. But for the sake of today, we're going to talk about adding a simple food menu that's going to make you more money. And when I talk about food data, I'm going to look at guests who are spending over $10 on food. And I'm going to talk about guests who spend less than $10 on food. It's not really a thumbs up or a thumbs down, but the more you can get them spending on food, the more thumbs up you're going to get. I don't normally get to do thumbs up on camera, Kary. So guests who spend more than $10 on food have an average total spend of about $77 compared to $42 for those guests spending less than $10 on food. Those spending less than $10 on food, they're probably just getting a bag of chips or absolutely nothing at all. So this represents a nearly $35 difference in total spend, indicating that higher food spending is going to correlate with a higher overall check. We see that tabs that include over $10 in food items versus less are going to be 82% higher. And you might ask, Andrew, are people who are buying food actually spending more on beer? Now, looking at the beer portions of their tab, the beer portion for the low food spenders is going to be about $42, which is most of their tab. For those who are spending more on food, it's about $48 they're going to be spending on food. So guests purchasing more food aren't replacing their beer purchases, but rather adding to the total check. Now, looking at the average price, that's a lot of P's right there, Kary. I apologize. Looking at the average per pint price point of $7, the average guest who also buys food on their tab has 6.8 beers on that tab, compared to 6 beers for tabs without meaningful food purchases. So if you don't have food on your menu right now, think about what you can add. And we're going to send some resources out following that, kind of give you a brainstorming activity of ways you can think about what might work in your tap room. Kary, any thoughts on food?
Well, we know you have to have food. So the question is usually, do I have, kind of bare minimum? Do I do a full kitchen? Well, I think the feeling here is you can be somewhere in between, but keep it simple. Really, for the primary reason that you won't, you'll offer your guests something delicious. You don't have to overcomplicate it. But from a financial perspective and how you're driving those profits, you have to be really mindful of how food can bring complexity to your business, and complexity can be expensive, and those margins can be quite a bit lower. So a simple food menu, a tight food menu is really the way to go from a profitability standpoint. And you can do it also in a way where you're going to deliver what your customer is looking for.
Absolutely. And we also see that guests, when they order food, they're going to hang out 18 minutes longer.
Demand pricing. So I don't know if we teed this up by saying this could be a little controversial, but I'll say it now. It could be a little controversial. So this came from, I was listening to a podcast. The gentleman's name is Nick Kokonis. He's opened a number of restaurants. He was not originally in hospitality or restaurateur. He was in IT. And so he brought different ideas. So the first thing we'd want to say is, look outside your industry for different ideas that you can bring into your tap room. It's always helpful to talk with other taproom owners. What are you doing? What's working? Yes, absolutely. But also look outside of our own business. So one of the things that he had brought in was sort of a concept of, things cost different amounts depending on the demand. It's supply and demand, right? Economics. So you might think about airline tickets. Why is that ticket so expensive today, but tomorrow it's so much less? It's called demand pricing, right? What about sports tickets? Well, how come this is twice as much as that game? It's called supply and demand. But we're somewhat reluctant to, or haven't yet thought about this concept within our own tap rooms. Why do people think about it this way? Everybody comes to your tap room Friday and Saturday. Nobody comes Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Why is that? Well, the demand's not there. Supply is there. Well, what if you were to think about pricing your products differently on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday? How exactly? Well, think about it. What if that beer is $8 on a Friday, but maybe it's only $5 on a Monday? I know it could be. This could be heresy, but it's really just to get you thinking. You don't have to be as literal as that, but think about what other industries are doing. Okay, I'll say it. Think about Uber. If you want that Uber during rush hour, I'm telling you what, you're paying twice as much as if you get that same ride when it's not quite as busy out. So I'll leave it there for now. Just kind of plant that seed out there. Demand pricing. Nick Kokonis did it in his restaurants and saw remarkable results as far as booking reservations and filling up. That's what we say is the most expensive seat in your tap room is the empty seat, right? So we want to fill them up. You want to look towards those days. How might you do that? Demand pricing could be something to check out.
Good insight there, Kary. Now we're going to talk about table service. So I don't know if this is controversial or not, but a lot of brewery models aren't sending servers out there unless you're like a restaurant style to help people at their tables. And what we currently see when looking at overall where people sit in breweries, this is a fascinating piece I pulled from the data set. 56% are sitting at tables. But as I'm about to share, those people sitting at tables aren't typically receiving the highest level of engagement. When I'm belly up to the bar, the average bar guest is going to spend a little over $32 compared to the average table guest who's spending about 27. However, when you move to the table experience, you're seeing more people often sit at tables. People come in larger parties are sitting at tables, and the overall tab is higher at those tables. So how can you maximize that? Engagement. The more opportunities your team has to potentially engage with people while they're sitting down and spending time in your tap room, the more opportunities you have to get that tab a little bit higher. Asking the question, would you like some food with that? Would you like to take something to go? Can I interest you in another beer? So here are a couple ideas to kind of try to test out table service, because in a tap room, consistency is key. I don't want to come on a Sunday afternoon and receive a high level of service at the table, then come back on a Friday night, sit at the table and like, where in the world is my server? That can be really frustrating for the guest. You have to set these expectations. So there are a couple things to think about here. So maybe you don't want to do table service at all. One thing you can consider is having a floater, maybe a manager or just a dedicated employee to do this. Have them walk around and touch each table, and don't offer to take orders, but say, hey, it looks like you really enjoyed that lager. You can go back to the bar in a minute and order a second. Oh, hey, is there anything I can help you with? And be that essentially educator of people, talking about how they can maximize their experience by engaging with your team and letting them know how to get the next part of their order completed. But once again, don't take orders if you are a floater. Just simply direct them in the right place to add that onto their tab. So could table service work for you? It's kind of scary to go all in on this. So maybe test it out. Pick a Thursday afternoon. Try it out. Have a certain section of your tap room where you're going to do it. For every person you interact with sitting in that section, specifically tell them, hey, we're testing this out. Don't expect it on your next visit. We want to see how it goes. Then what you can do, you can look at the average tab size from that day versus the prior Thursday and just simply see how it compares. That way you're not causing confusion or frustration for future visits. You're setting those expectations, letting that guest know we're just testing this out. So pick that window and do it. Setting expectations is key. I really suggest doing a trial run. I was talking to Corey Lord, a CPA in the beer world, and he was working with a client, and they shifted to table service 100% of the time. And they saw a 21% increase in tab size from January 2025 compared to January 2024. And he also added, they did it with the same level of staff. Because people often just stand behind the bar. They're only there to, pour something. They were able to do it with the same level of staff, and they saw a 21% increase in tab size. Oh, Kary, this is a good one. I'll let you kick us off.
These are two of my favorite words in the English language, and when you put them together, probably my absolute two: recurring revenue. How do you generate recurring revenue? So one of the challenges that we have in our taproom business is getting.
Hey, everybody on your
small chunks. And so recurring revenue, a few tenets to think about it. Okay, what would this be? You reimagine the mug club. Our traditional mug club is we only have a certain amount of mugs. Once we're sold out, we don't sell anymore until. So as we've talked about, Andrew, that's one of my huge pet peeves is, and I saw this just last night. We were at a tap room and someone wanted to buy the mug club and they said, well, we're full right now, but why don't you give me your name and we'll put you on the list if something opens up. And
You're really trying to give them more money, Kary.
I want to scratch my eyes out. And so I just say, look, all right, that might have been the way we did it before because we really valued exclusivity. And I'm in this club of there's only 100 mugs. It's like, okay, good. But create a second tier of your mug club. I don't need a mug with my name or not. I don't care. I want a bigger pour. Maybe give me a little discount. Give me a free beer on my birthday and a t-shirt. And I am happy as a clam and I will pay for that. So that's one, is expand the way that you're thinking about these. And recurring revenue might be, well, it's not just 100 a year and I hope he comes back in and renews. No, it's going to renew unless you decide to cancel or make it easy on people. We're also conditioned to make monthly payments. Netflix is every month. That electric bill is every month. Everything is every month. So plus it makes it more palatable. I'd rather pay, I don't know, $20 a month than upfront $150 for a mug club for a year or something like this. Make it easy for people. So if you do the math, well, $20 a month, that's $240 a year. Your annual that's much more than you were getting on your annual side. So break it down into chunks, kind of piggyback on what people are already conditioned to do, and really reimagine these mug clubs, if you will. And it can expand beyond the mug club. Certainly we talk a lot about loyalty programs and all the goodies. People want to engage with you. They love your beer. They love your brewery. They may love you and have a personal connection. So this is just one more way for folks to do business with you and really smooth out some of those bumps. Again, we're talking about taproom profitability. It's very hard to be profitable when sales on half of the week are so much lower than the other. I mean, we want to try to maximize all of your selling opportunities. Recurring revenue is a great way to think about that.
And how can your staff help on this? Simply asking the questions. From our data set that we see that on 86% of taproom visits, staff are not encouraging guests to sign up for a loyalty program, rewards program, mug club, or mailing list. So as the visit ends, or maybe your POS can do it automatically, here, drop in your email address or sign up for our loyalty rewards program so we can get you spending more money and giving you more reasons to return. Now, Kary, we're going to go to another maybe controversial one now. So I'm going to let you talk on this one. I don't want them to not like me.
We like controversy because it gets people thinking and thinking differently. And if it's offensive or you don't want to do it, hey, these are just ideas. Nobody's forcing you to do it. That's the beauty of owning your own business is you can listen and you can say thanks, but no thanks. Or you listen and you say, that's an interesting idea. I want to look more at that. So merchant credit card fees are a hot topic. What are these, right? So when you take a credit card, you're being charged as the merchant a certain fee. Maybe it's 2%, 2.5%, 3%, depending on your volume and whatever you've negotiated. But it's real money. So if you think about it on a, average tap room, let's just say, for easy numbers, call it $1 million. You do $1 million in revenue. Those merchant fees are 3%. Yeah, it's $30,000 a year. That's coming right out of your bottom line. Many, many businesses pass on those fees to the consumer. It's very transparent. It's on the slip. Most of the places I do business with now are passing it through. If you think gas stations or other restaurants, it's just the thing. So we're not reinventing inventing any wheels on this. But I would encourage you to look at it and think about it. Now, not all states is this legal. There's certain, and we'll provide some references where you can look it up and say. So we always say you want to check on this because there are some rules you'll need to follow. But start with the math. What does it make sense for you? How much money are we talking about? We have this concept that, my customers are going to hate this. Nobody's going to come in. They're going to complain, blah, blah, blah. My experience in working with breweries who have implemented this have had very little pushback. You're always going to get somebody who's frustrated about something. If it's not the merchant credit card fee thing, it's going to be a dirty table or too many kids or why do you have dogs in here or you don't have my IPA anymore. It's people like to complain. But here's an opportunity for you to say, all right, they're going to complain anyway. Maybe I can put an extra 10, 20, 30 grand to my bottom line just like that. And let's face it, it's happening all over and all the time. So think about it. Controversial, perhaps, but profitable? Yes, I think so.
I was talking to a brewery owner near me. They had debated doing this for a while. They were very nervous that people would get very upset, and they did it, and no one noticed. He's a little bit, has a thicker wallet these days, I suppose.
Nice.
So we've got 3 more bonus strategies for you to think about. Think about taproom design. And what we mean by taproom design, when someone walks in your taproom, how easy is it for them to order? The more streamlined and the more efficient the experience it is, the easier it will be for them to make a purchase. I remember once walking into a tap room. They had the big wall menu, and that was the only menu they had, so already a red flag there. But I looked in, and I didn't know where to order. There was stanchion kind of going on somewhere, but it really wasn't leading anywhere. So think about how the actual design of your experience can get guests spending more money. Kary, any specific thoughts on design for you?
Well, yeah, quite a few, but I'll probably limit it to. Okay, I'll use this. We've all been to museums, and there's a concept called exit through the gift shop, right? So whenever you leave that museum, and your kids are with you, or your kids with you, you're buying a stuffed animal, you're buying a keepsake, you're buying this, and it's a brilliant strategy, although it can be frustrating for the parents leaving with all these stuffed animals. But think about that. Like when I go to a brewery, I do want to, if I'm having a good time, I want some to-go beer. But if it's over there behind a crowd of people, it's very hard for me. I'm not going. I'm just not going to make the effort. I'd love to grab a t-shirt. I don't even know where they are. They're
I don't want to bother the bartender to grab it off the wall.
Don't make it hard for people to give you money, I think, is the main takeaway. So when you think about design, think about being a customer and think about people really do want to spend money with you. I really do want to get a t-shirt, but I really am not going to work hard to climb up that ladder and hope they have make it easy. So these are just simple retail concepts that you can think about. And sometimes, bring somebody in, maybe do a little focus group. Like, is it easy to buy from us? What would you see differently? Because we lose the forest for the trees a lot. We go in, we got a million things to do. I got to clean this. I got to hire new staff. I got to train a new blah, blah. It's very hard to remember these things, but that's why we're here, is to provide these little reminders that they're really not like, breakthrough ideas, but they're like, oh yeah, that actually could work. So make it easy for people to buy from you. Think about your design.
And when we say people, it's not just the guests, but also your staff. If your team member has to go all the way over there to get a 4-pack of beer to sell the guests, they're probably going to be a little less likely to do it. So make it easy for everyone involved. Now, this next tip is one that I actually just learned a couple days ago. I was having a conversation with a brewery owner halfway across the country. And one thing they said they do as a guest is getting towards the end of the visit. So you've got 2 people in the party. Kary wants another pint of that triple IPA he loves so much. He's feeling real good. But I'm like, you know what? I've had enough. How about a half pour, Andrew? Oh, yeah. That does sound like a good idea. You don't always have to serve someone your largest option. But if I was going to order something rather than nothing, a half pour is a nice addition to that bill. Now, Kary, this final one, and I know is one that you love, training your team to have a sales mindset. Tell us quickly about that one.
Well, I think it sort of brings it all together. We've talked about encouraging another. We've talked about to-go beer. We've talked about flights. And really what we're doing is we're selling. I mean, and I think for some of us, it's like a dirty word. Oh, no, I don't want to come off as salesy. But the line that I like is that nobody likes to be sold to, but everybody likes to buy. Isn't that true? I mean, we're consumers, and we're in your tap room because we like to be there. We want your beer, we want your products. So training your staff, because we train our staff in so many things, right? I want customer service, greet them, thank you, important, very important. Be cordial, interact, educate people, all good things. And these are components of sales, but none of it matters until you ask for the sale. And I like, we sort of touched around this, that, you don't get if you don't ask. And furthermore, those who ask for more get more. So there's ways. And one more cliche for you, right? It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So I could really come on and say, hey man, you really want to try this. You got to try it. Be an idiot. We don't want to do that. But if you come across and you're presenting the information to them and you're telling them why they're going to fall in love with this beer or this, that, or the other, there are ways to sell without being salesy. I think we know this. You and I are very, I think, content first. It's like, we just want to share good information. And if you like it, you'll buy what we have, pick up what we're putting down. So think about that. What is that mindset? Develop that sales mind. Do some sales training, and you can do it in a very authentic way that's consistent with the business you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about a lot today, but how to make your staff care, starting with that sales mindset. Hey, if you're able to do these things, you're going to make more money. Get them excited about doing more than just pushing a pint across the bar, but about building relationships and asking the questions. Literally, take away from today, ask the questions. So how to empower your staff to actually make all of this happen? Well, one tip, don't give them 10 billion things to do at once. Don't say, oh, well, make sure you wave to your guests when they leave. Make sure you wave to them when they first come in. Make sure you offer the flight. Make sure that you do the to-go beer. Whoa, that's a lot. I kind of overwhelm myself just even doing that. So really, each month, look at something that you want your team to do and make it a goal and make it measurable. So let's say we want your team to be better at offering to-go beer. We all want that. I'll preach that all day long. But what you're going to do, you're going to teach them how to do it. You're going to share the data behind it. And then you want to motivate them additionally to see results and actually perform. You don't want them to just do it on Monday. You want to make sure they're motivated to continually do it for themselves, but it's also going to impact you and your bottom line. So share the data behind it. Be like, oh, this secret hopper data set shows the guests When they're not asked, is only going to buy it 9% of the time. But when you say, hey, Andrew, do you want it? They're going to say yes 49% of the time. And you're going to see higher tabs. You're going to see higher tips. It's going to benefit everybody. And Kary, I know you love sharing the data. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's, there's a concept from the Great Game of Business Open Book Management is that, we can't win the game if we don't know the score, right? So we have to tell people, include them in, educate them. And ultimately what you're going to get is, the more information we share, the better engagement you're going to get from your staff. So really just empowering them with information to do their jobs better and serve the customer better.
So I'm going to give you 3 tools, and Kary's going to provide a bonus of ways you can get your staff excited about this. Rewards, giving them something physical. It might be a gift card to a local restaurant. It might be more, low fills that you have lying around the brew house. People like to be motivated. I will say this now. People also like to be paid well. I'm sure there's other people who can talk to you more about conversation, but treat your staff well. So I went to a brewery. They had been in existence about 2 years. We had a team meeting. And I said, look, what's going to motivate all of you at this table to sell more to-go beer on a Saturday afternoon? What's going to motivate all of you to sell more to-go beer on a Saturday afternoon? And the consensus from this group was they wanted whoever sold the most to-go beer on a Saturday to receive a $20 Chick-fil-A gift card. Literally, they just wanted a fancy chicken sandwich. $20 was going to motivate everyone to ask the question on the weekend. So what I encourage you to do, ask your team what's going to motivate them. Everybody responds differently to something. Some people like rewards. Other people like recognition. Recognition could simply be at your next team meeting. Kary did the best at whatever it was this past month. It could be a shout out on the team newsletter. People like to be recognized for also like opportunity. This could be the opportunity to go to a conference. It could be the opportunity to get some sort of certification. It could be the opportunity to maybe go from being a bartender at your brewery to being your next assistant manager or general manager. It really comes down to understanding why people are working at your business and what you can do. Just like you're crafting that customized guest experience, how can you customize that experience for your team? And Kary, how can we do this with incentives?
Incentives, they're so powerful. We know this. If done well, you can really get the outcome you want. If done poorly, oops, you got to watch out for what our good friend Aaron Gore would call pervasive incentives. So these work, but be careful with them. One quick example is there's a brewery up here in New Hampshire, and I was talking to the owner, Dave, about one program that he was running, and he thought, well, look, we sell to-go beer. I was thinking about how do we kind of increase that number. So we just created a team incentive whereby when we sold a certain amount of to-go beer, we're going to create a pot of money. So I think what he had said is to-go beer was like 5% of his taproom sales. And so he said, look, anything over 5%, we're going to put into a bucket. We're going to split it 50-50 between this, and the staff's going to, get 50% of that increase. And he saw tremendous results from him. People are like, oh, that it makes sense. It's simple. It's interesting. And to your point, all you do is ask. When people are checking out, this comes back to maybe sales training, is you don't have to be pushy. Oh, I saw you were ordering the Czech Pilsner. We do have a new 4-pack. Just came off the line. I don't know if you want a 4-pack. You can say it like that. Like, yeah, I do. Or, nah, today. That's fine. But the data shows if you ask, you're going to get it. And then you can provide these incentives, simple programs. Don't overcomplicate it. Do what Dave did and try that out with your staff.
And we were even having a conversation yesterday with a brewery owner who hired on a new taproom manager. He was talking about the incentives. He said, essentially, for every $1,000 you are over each, I don't know if it was week or month over last year's sales, I'm going to give you a bonus. So if you can have the tools to increase the amount people are spending into the taproom, I'm going to reward you for doing that. So today we have talked about a lot of things, and we don't want you to go back and try to work on all of them at once. Because if you do that, none of them are probably going to work. So these are the 10 strategies we mentioned. What we want you to do right now, write down the 1 or 2 that you actually want to do right now. And maybe next month, go back and try another one. But you don't want to overwhelm your taproom staff. You don't want to overwhelm your management. You really want to get really singular and have that goal that you can focus on. So take a look right now. Don't just look at Kary and I. Pull out that pen and paper, maybe type it on your computer. Which of these do you want to focus on at the moment? And as we wind down, we want to be a resource for you. We want to see you inside the Taproom Success community. We want to see you at that mastermind next month. We want to see you asking questions at that industry expert session. I honestly want you to reach out and say, hey, Andrew, do you have any data on this? And when I say no, I'm going to dive through my data set and try to get you the answer. Kary and I want to give you the tools to run a more successful taproom.
It's great stuff, Andrew. And yeah, scan the QR code, get the free Taproom resource bundle. I love bundles. Andrew, I know you love bundles, and I hope you out there watching us love bundles too. So check it out. It's good stuff. Like what we do is we just listen for cool ideas. We share them with you. Not everything's going to work. I like what Andrew says. You can't do everything at once. So just really start with one. We talk a lot about like focus weeks or focus months. I think that's a great way to kind of implement, test, experiment. This worked, this didn't. That actually was fantastic. Let's do that again. But you got to do it in a methodical fashion. We're in this for the long run, right? So slow down, pick one good thing that looks cool, try it. If it doesn't work, don't give up. Try another one, and try those focus weeks. They can really work for you.
Cheers, everybody. Wishing you success.